Okay, don't go, because now we have a fantastic keynote from a dear friend of South Summit and the person that represents innovation at Sathir. And we were just talking on the backstage about his keynote, because it's kind of abstract. When I was preparing to introduce him, I say, I don't understand what you're going to talk about. And he said, it's very simple. We have the framework of innovation. We need three things. 1, technology. 2, people. 3, business models. We focus a lot on technology and business models. But what about the people? There are 95% of decision making are the people, the human side. So our next keynote speaker is going to talk precisely about that, how important that is, and he'll probably tell us a couple of secrets. So please, let's welcome the head of innovation at Sathir, Victor de Avila. Welcome, Victor. All yours. Is that right, or is that right, what I said?
Yes, perfect.
He's going to give us all the tips. Thank you, Victor.
How much time do I have?
You have, I believe, 25 minutes? You'll see it there.
Okay.
How much time do you need?
No. It's, that time is okay. What happens is this morning they told me they have 15 minutes instead of 20, and I had to, rehearse many times in order to tackle this in just
We're not that stingy here. We're not that stingy.
Okay.
You have 25 minutes, I think.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Victor.
First of all, thank you very much for coming at this time, because it's not easy after lunch, talking about something that might be a little bit abstract. But I hope that by the end of my presentation, you take home a framework that will allow you to help you to sell your ideas and your innovations in your own organizations or within your clients. Technology and emotional brain are two of the elements that in fact are critical for any innovation. The third is the business model. So the sweet spot of innovation is this intersection between what the technology can offer together with a sustainable business plan, and obviously give an answer to pain points or needs that a client, a customer, a user wants to use, okay? So that intersection is where the innovation takes place. I will talk very quickly about the technology and then go into people, because the critical factor in innovation has to do with persons, okay? Now, technology is changing very fast. The world actually is changing very fast. In 100 years ago, American Scientific did a survey trying to asking their readers what were, at that time, their more interesting innovations and what they foresee as to be the greatest innovations for our time at that year. And if you see the graph, I don't know if you can see it here, but the 5 top innovations at that time have become something very already being used normally or usually in our lives. Airplanes, X-rays, automotive, motion pictures, all that are already a reality. Now, if we take just one example, the car, as an example, in order to identify how quick this has been disrupted, this has been disrupting the whole industry, that transportation and mobility industry, we can just take a look into this photo. This is New York, the beginning of the century, in the park in the Fifth Avenue in New York. And I don't know if you guys can see the horses. The horses, basically all these are horses, but where is the car? The car is here in this point. Only one car and crowded by horses. 13 years later, in just a short period of time, 13 years later, this is the picture of the same street in New York, full packed of cars, and where's the horse? Only one little horse lost in the middle. This is the kind of disruption that the technology has been bringing to us in the last century. Now, what is going on right now is that there is a convergence of technologies that are accelerating this process a lot faster. We have artificial intelligence, blockchain, IoT, cloud apps, and all these things that are basically disrupting a number of industries, because it's not only one technology. It's a number of technologies going together that is transforming, that is changing our world very rapidly. For example, the radio took 38 years to have 50 million users. iPads, I don't know, you guys remember, but iPad was launched in 2010. It took 80 days to achieve 50 millions. But Pokemon Go took them 19 days. That's the speed of how technology is evolving, and it's getting, users in this century. Now, let's take a look. What are the reasons here? One of the first reasons of this is that the technology has become accessible, cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. Gordon Moore was one of the founders at Intel, and he saw that every year the total number of transistors incorporated into a chip was doubling every 24 months. And then he said, this is going to happen, and this will continue to happen in the coming years. This turned to be what is called now the Moore's Law. And this is the reality about what is going on. The comparison between the Intel chip, the Core i7 that was launched in 2016, is 80,000 times faster, 2.4 million times cheaper, and 300 times better than the Intel chip launched in 1971. So this is exponential growth. This is something that our brain cannot understand. These figures are huge, are enormous. So this is dropping. In other words, this is making the technology a lot more accessible and a lot more feasible, as we saw in the first slide. That's the speed for processing. But what happens with the storage capacity? The storage capacity is basically the same thing. In 1956, you needed a cargo if you wanted to move your data storage device from one office to another one, or 5 or 6 big guys like that ones that are transporting it. Now I have one like that in my pocket. Imagine how many times cheaper and lighter and smaller is this compared with what was developed at that time. And this is not all. If we take a look of what has happened between 2005, that we all here remember, we're alive and probably have a little bit sense of these issues, compared with what we have right now, it has multiplied by 1,000 the times of storage capacity. So technology is a major driver for innovation. Data will continue to be, data will become the real value of what companies are developing. Actually, I was in a visit recently at Intel, and they told me that they are already the owner, the market leaders in terms of chips and computers, but they want to go after the data. Not just of the microchips, but the data. That's what they want, because they consider that there will be a data flow that they call data flood, to give an idea of how much information will be flow in the economy. Now, this is we have been talking about technology, but we all know that if you are selling innovation within a product, or proposing changes that innovate in your own organizations, you will have the same sensation than me as innovation officer at Sazir, that many times people don't understand what I'm saying. They say, no, 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 that's too heavy. That's too expensive. We have been doing this for years. And this has to do a lot with emotional brain. I want to ask you, just raise your hands. How many of you think that, how many of you think that 50% of our decisions are rational? 50. How many think that is 40%? Nothing. How many? 20%. How many? 5%. Well, okay, let me tell you something. 90 to 95% of our decisions are emotional. We, the engineers, I don't know how many engineers are here, but we're many. But we try to think that everything we do is rational. That's not true. Our brain is wired emotionally, and then it's very good to rationalize, to rationalize the emotional decision. It's not the other way. It's first we decide emotionally, and then we try to rationalize that decision. When it comes to innovation, this sets up different mindsets. And I will tell you a model that's probably going to be interesting for you in the future to understand how the emotional brain works. Imagine that unless you are a psychopath, there are two emotions, functional psychopath, there are two emotions that are very much important in our lives. The first one is arouse, and the other one is pleasantness. Arouse is, how do you translate that? As emocional, how do you call it? How would that translate arouse? Excitación, excitement, exactly. You can be excited, or there are two ways, high or low, and you can feel pleasant, pleasure, the positive and a negative way. If you are in a high arousal mode, but in a low pleasant state, you are stressed. Okay? You are stressed because in that position, you feel anxiety, you feel fear, frustration, etc. And your brain is only focused to solve that problem. It cannot go to do something else but to solve that problem. And what the brain is wired to go and look for contented, comfort, look for places known, for familiar things, for predictability, for trust. It's not going to be able to look for something else. This brain is wired that if it's stressed, solve the problem and then move to a comfort zone. Okay? Now, to do this, the brain needs the following neurochemicals. You need cortisol to solve the stress, the problem. That's your brain generates cortisol. Imagine that you are a zebra and you're going to be attacked by a lion. The brain of the zebra, as our brain, because we're mammals, is wired to produce cortisol to solve that immediate problem. You know, imagine that your boss, it's 6 o'clock in the morning, in the afternoon, and ask you to give him a report tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock. You generate a lot of cortisol, okay? You generate a lot of cortisol to solve that problem, but what it's looking for at the end is to go into the content state. And then the chemical that allows you to be in that state is called serotonin. So the brain is chemical. It's chemistry, pure chemistry. When you are in the state, when you're in the state of contentment, you are not ready to innovate. You have fear for failure. You are fear of making mistakes. You want to stay in that stage, okay? Now, let's take another look. What happens if you are, and this is called the mindset one, type mindset one. Okay, keep it out in mind. What happens if you are in an emotional state where you are bored? When you are bored, that means that you are in a low arousal state, plus in a low pleasant state. This is typical when kids take the car and after several hours start to ask, falta mucho, falta mucho, falta mucho. Well, come on, after 5 minutes and you're already asking me this. And what they want is excitement. And this is what the brain looks for, excitement, okay? And when you look for excitement, you are looking for unknown, variety, novelty, discovery. You are ready to take high-risk opportunities. The chemical that works in that, to do that is the dopamine. In that stage, you are not afraid to make mistakes. You are afraid of losing opportunities. This is a typical story of someone that, let's say, let's go back to the example of the zebra. The zebra, once they go into the herd starts to calm down. The lion already went away, and now I'm ready to explore and go somewhere else. This is how the brain of the zebra generates dopamine and starts to be excited and go and investigate for another lake, another stallion, or whatever she is thinking. In the case of, for example, divorced people, first they get very much stressed, then they jump into the state of comfort, they get bored, and they're looking for adventures again. Okay? This is called the type 2 mindset. So this model is very interesting because when you're talking about the type 1 mindset, it's an operational mindset. Most companies work and operate in that mindset. The P&L response, keep the costs, the projects and the contracts that you're working on has to be achieved, it has to be finished on time. This is the kind of mindset that's very important in any organization, but it has to be balanced with innovation mindset, because the first one is very good to deliver short-term results, but without a vision. Type 2 mindset gives you the vision of long-term, of changing things, of questioning how might we do things different instead of how can we do the same thing. Okay, which is mindset 1. This is very important because the moment you are selling an innovation to someone in your organization or with a client, you have to understand where is their mindset. If it's going through a process of stress, big stress, he will not listen to you. It's impossible. The cortisol, the neurochemical of cortisol, is the one that dominates. If it's high, the dopamine and the serotonin can do nothing in order to go outside of this state. But I don't know if you have heard. And then another important idea is that if you are content, you cannot go directly to excited. You have to go first to the path of being bored, and then from bored to excited. And then from excited, you move down, back to stress. This is like an X. That's why it's called the X model. This is a model developed by Professor Baba Shiva at Stanford University. It has a lot of research behind this. Now, just to finish, remember that the corporate immune system, which is type 1, will always prevent changes by definition. Always. If you are, most of us are involved in innovation, we have lived that one. Mindset 1 is innovation proof. While the mindset 2 is the one that brings the ideas up, and both are very important. To conclude this, I will say the following ideas. First one is technology is important, but not enough to innovate. Second idea, 95% of the human decisions are shaped by the emotional brain. a neuroscience framework like this one, the X framework that I'm just mentioning, can be applied to gain insights about our stakeholders in our organizations. And when I say stakeholder, is board members, peers, bosses, the whole community of stakeholders that are related with you regarding innovation. Fourth is understanding how people in organizations view risk-taking is critical to innovate. If we don't understand how they view risk-taking, then it's impossible to get this innovation. It takes a long time. And then the fifth idea around this is the agile organizations move effectively between these two mindsets. Only those, and it's very difficult to do this. These are what is called ambidextrous organization or agile organizations. The ones that can live with these two mindsets. For example, Google is a typical one, with Google X being the innovations arm and the research engine being the mindset one. Okay? And finally, I want to ask you a question. What is the predominant organizational mindset in your organizations, in your functions, even in your house? And this is it. I don't know if there is some question regarding this.
Are there any questions, guys? You feel free to raise your hand. Yeah? Or any doubts? Victor still has
7 seconds.
7 seconds. The mindset in the house, usually, you said, who is the mindset in the house, yeah? Is the wife.
Absolutely.
Is the woman. That's the boss, Yeah. That's type 1 or 2.
You're right. She's the boss most of the time.
Okay, I think time's up. But Victor de Avila, are you going to be around a little bit?
Yeah. You can, I hope you enjoyed this model. It's very applicable in your innovation ventures. And thank you very much for listening to me and coming here.
Thank you so much. Round of applause for Victor. Victor, fantastico. That was extremely interesting, Victor.
Thank you.
Last time I saw Victor in an event, he was talking, obviously working at Sathir, a big construction company. He was talking about bridges and roads and engineering stuff. This is quite surprising.
Yeah, but this is what we are applying now in order to innovate in such a brick-and-mortar
company.
Yeah.
And he looks very, I told him when I saw him, I said, you look fantastic, young and energetic. It's all these type 1, type 2 P&L, all these things that are happening in Sathir. I am totally shocked with this company. Congratulations, Victor.
She's my sister, eh?
No.
Thank you.
I'm much more beautiful and young.